Are you wondering how much 1 year of traveling costs? I can't really tell you that. It highly depends on you. But for reference, here is what I spent. $29,808. Hello and welcome back to the channel. My name is Mike. I am pursuing FI, and after traveling around in Asia in 2022, I'm exploring how to live a financially independent life without actually being financially independent yet. Today, I'm breaking down my expenses for living and traveling in Asia for 1 whole year. I hope it helps you to realize that it's actually very doable and you start planning your own trip. Now go, pack your bags. Before we get into the details, a disclaimer. The way I traveled is likely different from yours. I did not try to visit as many places as possible. I opted to instead stay in one place for a longer time period. I do not enjoy tourist attractions very much, but I did not particularly limit myself when it comes to spending money on things I enjoy, as you later will see. In total, I spent about $30,000, which is below the budget I set for myself. I planned for about 100 USD per day, or about 36K per year. The 30K includes everything I spent on accommodation, flights, food, entertainment, etc. And it pretty much matches what has left my bank account. I tracked my spending in a simple Google Sheet. Typically, right after spending money, I would enter it into the sheet. I prefer this method of tracking money because it is an additional reminder that I just spent money. It doesn't prevent me from spending money though. For that, I have another technique called wish list strategy. 30K is a lot of money. You can definitely go cheaper. But for reference, it is less than what I would normally spend living in Switzerland. As you can guess, my biggest expenses were accommodation, food, includes eating out and groceries, and transportation, which also includes flights. One expense that you probably might not have is surfing. Mostly surf camps, but it also includes my beloved surfboard. As surf camps usually include food and accommodation, I split the cost for surf camps into 40% accommodation, 10% food, and 50% surfing related topics such as coaching, classes, surfboard rentals, etc. Here's the breakdown to the individual countries per day. The top and the bottoms are outliers. India was expensive because I was traveling with friends and staying in more luxurious hotels than I would normally would. Singapore, on the other hand, was cheap because I was staying at a friend's place. I guess the moral of the story for people pursuing FI is, don't travel with friends, go visit them. Depending on the country, the distribution of costs was different. But I am not going into the details. If you're curious, hit pause now. I, however, created this little, arguably a bit subjective table on how affordable food, accommodation, transportation, and surfing is. There are 3 ratings. Very affordable, good value for money, kind of expensive. Cambodia, overall pretty good price to value ratio. Nothing was particularly expensive. Even the entry ticket to Angkor was pretty reasonable in my opinion. I recommend it if you are on a tighter budget. India, hotels are expensive if you expect a certain not too high standards. There are huge price differences though, and they're maybe a bit skewed towards both ends of the spectrum, so high end and low end, and not so much in the middle. I would somewhat recommend it if you are on a tighter budget. Bali, you can live expensively if you live the influencer lifestyle, but I was able to find some reasonable deals because tourism hasn't fully picked up yet. Lombok, accommodations are a bit more expensive than Bali, but the food is cheaper. However, if you plan to go surfing, many surf spots are only accessible via boats, which is kind of a bummer, but the waves are a bit emptier. Kuala Lumpur, for a modern international city, quite affordable. Standard of accommodation is rather high for the price. I got a nice apartment for the price of what I would normally pay for a small hotel room. Recommend as a city trip. Singapore is expensive AF. Even their hawker stores are not cheap anymore. Do not recommend if on a budget. Sri Lanka. Overall, everything is still very affordable. The standard of accommodation is a bit lower compared to other places more adapted to tourism. For example, AC is not a standard. Other than that, I would highly recommend it. Taiwan. Taiwan is more on the expensive side of travel. Cheaper than Japan, and it can be done on a budget if you lower your standards regarding accommodation. For example, going to hostels instead of hotels. As you have seen, I spend a lot of money on surfing, but I guess you can substitute that with any other activities you're doing. Here is where I was able to save the most amount of money. Food. Eat local food because it is tastier, you get to experience local culture through food, and it is cheaper. Western food, or better said, food for Westerners, is available almost everywhere. So naturally, as a self-identified banana, I also crave avocados on toast, smoothie bowls, burgers, etc. from time to time. But honestly, just like after watching Cartoon, I found it usually a bit disappointing. And unlike Cartoon, I definitely overpaid for the food. Transportation. I did not travel a lot because I just didn't want to spend a lot of time in transit. Also, flights within Asia are cheaper than flying from and back to Europe. The third point, lack of shopping. If you have to carry around everything that you buy, you just don't want to buy anything. Is traveling on your bucket list? I say just go for it. It is not cheap, but it is definitely more affordable than you think. Life is also shorter than you think. Read 4,000 weeks. Money is recoverable. Time is not. Neither is your energy or health. Thank you for watching and see you next time. Now go pack your bags.